He came running through the rain, barefoot, shaking, and barely able to breathe. A frightened black boy, desperate enough to sprint toward the one man everyone else feared, the Mafia boss. Behind him, his mother's cries echoed through the night, a sound that shouldn't exist in any neighborhood, in any world. He wasn't running from criminals. He was running from something even darker, something that had followed his family for years. And in that moment, the most dangerous man in the city became his only hope. But what had driven such a terrifying choice for this child? What happened when the boss finally turned around? Before everything unraveled, life for 12-year-old Malik was simple in the way only childhood can be. He lived with his mother, Amina, in a small, aging apartment on the quieter side of the city, an area where neighbors still greeted each other, where kids played in the parking lot until sunset, and where hope survived in small pockets despite everything working against it. Amina worked long hours at a corner store, doing everything she could to shield her son from the world's cruelty. And Malik, bright and curious, tried to believe her when she said things would get better. But even in their routine, there were cracks, subtle, sharp reminders of just how this world viewed families like theirs. The stares into certain neighborhoods, the way security guards followed them around stores, the comments whispered just loud enough. Malik noticed more than his mother ever wanted him to, yet he learned how to hold it inside, keep moving. Still, Amina harbored a silent fear she never spoke of. There were people in their building that didn't want them there, people who believed the color of their skin made them less deserving of safety, of dignity, of space. In the past weeks, that hostility had begun to coalesce, first into whispers, then into threats, and finally as something weightier, settling in over their home like a storm cloud. Malik sensed his mother's tension in each creak of her locked door at night, each double check of her window. He didn't know the full truth, not yet. He didn't know how close danger truly was. He knew only that the world outside their front door was changing, and something was coming for them, something his mother hoped he would never have to face. But fate had already chosen otherwise. The shift from unease to danger began quietly. Small moments that most people would dismiss, but moments Malik and his mother could no longer ignore. It began with their mailbox, ripped open for 3 consecutive nights, their letters stomped into the hallway. Then came the shouting down the corridor, voices laced with hatred, insisting they did not belong there. Amina tried to remain calm, offering tight smiles and soft words, but her eyes betrayed the fear deep inside. Malik also heard the whispers at school. The older boys who smirked whenever he passed, the ones who joked about the color of his skin, his home, his mother. He tried to brush it off like everyone told him, but its weight fell upon him like a shadow that never left. Every evening as he walked back home, the tension in the air seemed to thicken, as if even the walls were holding their breath. One night, things escalated. Malik was doing homework at the kitchen table when the first thud shook the door. Amina stiffened. Another thud, louder, followed by cruel laughter. Malik froze, his pencil slipping from his fingers. Amina silently motioned him behind her, her hand trembling as she reached for the chain lock. But before she could secure it, something slammed against the wood so hard the whole frame shuddered. Someone shouted from the hallway. Slurs, threats, promises of what they would do. Amina stood her ground, but Malik could see the fear in her face. The noise started to dissipate until only an ominous silence was left. But they knew this was far from over. It was only just getting started. Over the next few days, the harassment grew bolder. Someone spray-painted hateful words across their door. Their trash was dumped in front of their apartment. Neighbors who used to nod politely now looked away, unwilling to get involved. It felt like the entire building had chosen a side, and it wasn't theirs. Amina tried to seek help, but the manager of the building dismissed her complaints. Kids being kids, he said. Even as Malik stood beside her holding a broken window frame they found smashed that morning. The police report she tried to file went nowhere, too. We'll look into it, they said, their tone flat, uninterested. And then came the night everything spiraled out of control. Malik awoke to shouting not from the hallway this time, but from right outside their living room window. Male voices, angry and slurred, arguing about teaching someone a lesson. He peered through the blinds and froze. 3 men stood there, men from their building, men who had glared at them for months. One held a metal bat. Another kicked over a flower pot Amina had carefully kept alive for years. Malik ran to his mother's room, but she was already awake, already terrified. Before they could react, the men were at the door, pounding harder than ever. The frame cracked. Amina shoved Malik behind the couch, her breath shaking as she tried to hold the door shut on her own. Then came the blow that shattered everything, the moment when the door finally gave way. The men stormed in, shouting, threatening, furious. One of them grabbed Amina, and Malik felt something inside him break. He wanted to run, to help, to scream, but all he could do was watch as terror unfolded inches from him. That was when he made that decision that no child should ever have to make. When the men had become distracted, Malik ran through the back door, sprinting into the night with nothing but fear and desperation pushing him forward. He didn't know where he was going, only who he needed. The one man feared by all, yet the only one who might listen. The boss of the Mafia. And Malik ran toward him as if his mother's life depended on it, because it did. Malik's legs burned, the night swallowing his breath as he ran. But he didn't stop, not when his lungs screamed, not when the streets blurred beneath him. He burst into the alley where the Mafia boss, Vincent Moretti, was known to conduct his late-night meetings. Men in dark coats turned sharply, hands drifting toward their weapons, but Malik didn't care. He stumbled forward, tears streaking down his cheeks, desperately trying to form words that wouldn't come. Moretti stepped out of the shadows, his expression unreadable. This man commanded fear with a glance. No one dared approach him uninvited. Yet there, before him, stood a quivering child, clinging to his shirt and gasping out one fact that cut through the chill of the night. His mother was under attack. There was a moment's silence, thick and heavy and suffocating. Then something shifted in Moretti's eyes. Perhaps the boy's quivering voice, or the bruises welling along Malik's arms, or perhaps the bitter familiarity of watching power abused by those who thought they would never be called to account. Whatever the reason, the Mafia boss turned to his men in a razor-sharp command that set them moving in a heartbeat. They followed Malik back through the winding streets, the roar of the engines behind them like thunder. Malik ran ahead, praying he wasn't too late. When they reached the apartment complex, the hallway was chaos. Shattered glass, overturned furniture, and screams of hate echoing through the door of his home. In the room, one of the men was still holding Amina against the wall with his fist raised. Amina was bruised and shaking, barely conscious. Malik froze in the doorway just as Moretti's men stormed in behind him. What happened next unfolded in seconds. Shouts, bodies pulled apart, rage colliding with raw fear. But the image that seared into Malik's memory forever was the moment Moretti himself stepped forward, standing between Amina and the men who hurt her, his voice low, cold, final. And when the police sirens began to pierce the night from afar, Malik realized with terrifying certainty. This was no longer just a rescue, it was a reckoning. By the time the sirens finally reached the building, the chaos had already settled into a thick, pulsing silence. The attackers were restrained, shaken in ways they never thought possible. Amina sat on the floor, clutching Malik with shaking arms, her breathing uneven but alive. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't fighting alone. And Malik, shaken and exhausted, but safe, realized just how close he had come to losing everything. Confused, the police entered, not quite sure how a call for disturbance had escalated into a scene too brutal to ignore. Their reports were careful now, their questions more considerate, their tone different, because this time the truth was not hidden in the dark. It stood openly in front, with bruises, broken furniture, and a child's fear carved on the walls. Investigations finally opened in the days that followed. For once, somebody listened. The neighbors who had stayed silent came forward. The building manager who dismissed Amina's pleas was summoned for questioning, and the men who thought they could terrorize a black family without consequence were forced to face what they had done. But justice, even when served, never erases the wound. Malik was different after that night. He walked differently, older somehow, quieter in ways children shouldn't have to be. Amina held him tighter, knowing that fear leaves shadows long after the danger is gone. They moved away from the building, trying to rebuild a sense of safety, but the memory followed them everywhere. And yet, their story is not rare. It is one of many echoing through cities, whispered through neighborhoods, carried by families who fight battles no one else sees. Racism doesn't always wear a uniform or shout in the street. Sometimes it starts with a whisper, grows in the dark, and erupts when no one is watching. So the question remains, how many more families have to go through this before we decide that silence is no longer an option?